Tuesday, September 11th, 2018. I'm Mark Crutcher, president of Life Dynamics, and lurking nearby are the usual suspects. Lurking nearby are the usual suspects. My assistant Renee. Hello, Renee.
Hello.
And my daughter Sheila.
I'm not lurking. I'm here, but I'm not lurking in the
Yes,
shadows.
you're always lurking. I've never seen you or Renee, either one, when you weren't lurking nearby. First off, let's acknowledge that this is the anniversary of September 11th.
It is.
And
17 years.
one thing that bothers me, and I look around the country and see how some people are treating our national security, I think they've forgotten about this.
Yes, I believe so.
Yes, and I mean, even though I was, a little kid, I still I can see the difference between pre 9/11 and post 9/11.
Yeah.
And you can tell the difference in America. But like you said, people still have forgotten
They have short memories.
Yes, to respect those who keep us safe and those who went through this. And
It's definitely a day to remember.
It's one of those days that you'll always remember where you were.
Yeah, exactly. And what you were doing, every detail about that day.
It's like I can remember that. Of course, y'all weren't here then, but when the day Kennedy was assassinated, and I was in high school, and I mean it was amazing. I mean it was astonishing to see, and it was especially interesting considering that he was shot about 1 o'clock. Well, about 11 o'clock that morning, he had driven past our high school, just a few blocks from our high school, and they had let us all out, and the whole school walked down to Highway 183,
drive by.
where the motorcade was known to come by.
Yeah.
And it was almost 2 hours to the minute
Yeah.
that we saw him in Fort Worth
Yeah.
right before he got shot. So, but it's one of those days, and I'm sure that that people were alive when Pearl Harbor happened. They remember where they were, and it should, or like when the moon landing.
Yeah. Well, I don't. Yeah.
You don't remember.
With the space shuttle exploding, I was in school when that happened, and
Right.
we all got to watch it. And
Right.
yeah, I mean, it's just a hard day.
It was.
it's amazing that there are those moments, those defining moments that shape the course of history.
Yeah.
And 9/11, unfortunately, was one of them.
And I'm worried that so many of our people are letting their guard down and not paying attention to this.
Yeah.
Anyway, we've got a lot of things that are trending in the news, so let's get to them. Radical pro-abort Dianne Feinstein from California.
Senator from California.
Yeah. Nuisance from California. This woman just continually lies through her teeth. It's unbelievable. And lies in ways that's easy to get caught at. That's the amazing thing.
Well, she's a politician and
Well,
she's a pro-abort.
And she's
so,
a leftist, a godless member of the godless left. And during the Brett Kavanaugh hearings, she claimed that she sentenced women to jail for having illegal abortions. Turned out to be completely just
Right.
made up out of whole cloth. The other thing she said was that a lot of women died prior to Roe versus Wade, and she said it was between 200,000 and 1.2 million women
Of illegal abortion.
died of illegal abortions. This is the biggest crock.
Well, I mean, it's fake news, and she wants to believe her own rhetoric. So if she states it, then other people on her side
Assume
are going
it's
to
true.
believe it, are going to assume it's true, and they're gonna try to shout as loud and
Right.
as obnoxious as they can.
Well, the important thing to realize is that even Planned Parenthood, NARAL, and CDC have stated numbers that contradicts her statement.
Right.
So it was obvious that she was lying.
And she knew she was lying.
And plus, it's also to remember that a bunch of illegal abortions are actually performed by physicians.
Well, that's what I was going to bring up. Even as far back as the 1960s, in the first of the 1960s, Planned Parenthood director Mary Calderon was making statements that almost all of the abortions done in America at that time were done by doctors who were simply breaking the law.
Yeah.
This idea, it's kind of a Hollywood myth, the idea of some greasy old man with a coat hanger
in the back alley.
in a back alley or in some cold water apartment. To show you how outrageous this is, the National Abortion Rights Action League occasionally still puts out, and you hear some of their advocates, some people in the abortion lobby say that prior to Roe, 5,000 to 10,000 women died every year from botched abortions. Now, the CDC says the number was less than 100, but nonetheless, they say it was 5 to 10,000.
And how do you even get those numbers to
didn't.
be even closely accurate? You can't.
They just made them up.
And the
Exactly.
CDC, they lies anyways. I mean, a woman will die from an abortion, but it won't be abortion related. It'll be a different cause.
Well, we proved that with Lyme 5, and
Right.
we've seen that time and time and time again here.
How they bend the numbers.
And you can go on our website, safeandlegal.com, and find hundreds of women that have died from legal abortions that we have the confirmation on
Right.
that are not counted by the CDC.
Right. And I also want to point out that even if a doctor is a licensed physician who is licensed to do abortion, women still get killed and injured by those doctors.
That's what we're talking
so
about,
So it doesn't matter if the abortion is legal or not. It's still a murder of a child,
Right.
and women still get hurt and killed.
Right.
In fact, I would encourage viewers to go to safeandlegal.com
Right.
to see this epidemic that, abortion proponents don't want.
And we haven't even updated it recently. We've had some deaths recently that we haven't updated the website with.
Yeah.
But if you want to see how outrageous this 5 to 10,000 women a year dying is, if you go to the United States Census Bureau figures, in the 10 years prior to Roe versus Wade, there were on average 50,000, there were a little over 506,000 women died during that whole 10,000 years that were of childbearing age.
Right.
From all causes, car wrecks, whatever,
Right.
cancer, whatever it might be. That's an average of 50,000 a year. If you're going to sit here and say that as many as 10,000 women a year used to die from botched abortions, what you're saying is that 1 out of 5 of all the women who died prior to Roe versus Wade died from a botched abortion.
Which is not
It's just preposterous to suggest such a thing.
Well, speaking of preposterous, these people just in general are. We talked about a story, or we posted on social media about a PETA story.
Which is People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals.
Yeah. Well, anyways, there was a truck carrying lobsters in Maine, transporting them, that got into a crash. And so 7,000 pounds of lobsters died. Well, PETA wanted to erect a memorial for them on the spot where they died. They had a picture of the gravestone, the mock gravestone, and they asked Maine officials if they could erect this memorial. Well, at the end of August, Maine officials, got back to them and told them, no, you can't erect this memorial for lobsters. It's a safety issue.
Right.
So
If they would take that energy and apply it to the unborn, can you imagine?
Yeah, but they're pro-aborts.
yeah,
Yeah, I know.
I love animals, but why do they care more about lobsters than they do unborn children?
Right, because they're whacked out.
Yeah.
And yes, and obviously, we've talked about here before, we love animals.
Oh, very much.
As we speak, within just a few feet of us here
We-
are 3 dogs and a cat. Right?
We have a lot of animals.
And matter of fact, I wouldn't be surprised that every once in a while viewers of Life Talk hear them in the background. Especially when Tux, our newest dog, is chasing the other
The cat or something.
cat up and down the hall. But so we love animals. But to consider them on an equal footing with humans is preposterous.
And
let me tell you something. They can say that all they want to, but none of them believe it. And I'll tell you how you can prove it, because I've done this on shows before when these PETA people have called in. Well, why aren't you all upset about the way animals are treated? Well, I am upset about the way animals are treated,
exactly.
but they're not humans. And anybody that says they are, let me pose this to you. I'll ask you, Renee. Let's just say for a moment that you're one of those PETA people, and you think that animals are on the same footing with human beings. If you were driving to work tomorrow and you ran over somebody's 3-year-old child and killed them, are you telling me that you'd be no more upset than if you ran over a squirrel?
No, I would be devastated. I
Right.
mean, they would probably
Any decent
have
human
to-
being would.
Yeah, exactly.
And so until you can come up and tell me that, yes, I would be as devastated running over a squirrel or hitting a dog or a cat in the street as I would running over somebody's 3-year-old or 5-year-old kid.
Right.
Until you can tell me that, then you're a liar if you tell me you put animals and humans on
first.
the same level. It's nonsense.
Yes, it is.
Something that's we used to talk about on almost every show, because it happens every month, is abortion mills shutting down. And they continue to shut down at really, really good rates. Yep. When I started Life Dynamics, I've told this a million times on here. When I started Life Dynamics in '92, there were 2,126 freestanding abortion clinics in the country. Now there are fewer than 525, and they continue to shut down.
Right.
And we just had one in Nashville, Tennessee, and what made me bring this up, did 73,000 abortions over a 30-year period of time, and it's called the Women's Center, closed its doors at the end of August, and now Planned Parenthood is the only death camp in the area. But this is just a continuing trend. We don't report on it as much as we used to because it's an every month deal.
Right.
But this place shut down because they had a hard time obtaining licensing.
Right.
And so you talk about safe and legal abortions. Well, do you want to go have a surgical procedure done at a place that can't keep its license?
Right.
No. And I mean, that's a common trend among abortion clinics.
Yeah.
That's not uncommon.
People don't look into that, though, before they go and kill their baby. It's just...
They don't.
But that's a lot of deaths. 30
Yep.
years, 73,000. It's a...
Now, one thing that we want to expose here, Colin Kapernick is this NFL football player who started the kneeling during the national anthem thing. And you can get all wrapped around the axle about that one way or the other. I'm not going to get into that. But one of the things that's happening is, especially since he's got this new deal with Nike.
Which I want to point out, after that came out, Nike stocks dropped.
Stock plummeted.
They have
right.
lost
So-
a lot of money.
Right.
I think that should be a message to Nike right there.
Well, I doubt it will be because it's a political thing. But anyway, Kaepernick is raising all this money, people giving money to him. And the question then becomes what's happening with all this money? A lot of it is going into pro-abortion organizations. He directly donated $25,000 to the Center for Reproductive Rights, and he gave another $25,000 to the Lower East Side Girls Club, with $8,000 of it earmarked to go to Detroit's version of the radical pro-abortion women's march, and for young girls to go to the pro-porn, anti-science Team Vogue summit.
That's sick.
These people are sick. This Team Vogue thing, it's from Vogue magazine, is pushing all kinds of unsafe sexual practices on these girls. And, I mean, it is...
They're very openly doing it, too. Anal sex, everything. I mean,
Right.
it's just... It's an absurdity.
They're
It's just
teaching these girls anal
disgusting.
sex is a good way not to get pregnant.
And so it's, if he should direct his money to better organizations and causes.
The thing is that he has been adopted.
I know.
You would think that
He was adopted, yeah.
His money, his compassion, the money would go towards
Right.
adoption agencies or something that would help fatherless or children.
Something.
Pro-family,
Pro-family.
pro-life, something
Yeah.
useful
You would
instead of
think
pro-death.
that any adopted child, and I know we went through this with you one time, and I'll tell the story here in a little bit because we're going to talk about adoption when we come back from RoeBots. At a very young age, you recognized, without me or Tulane or anybody else ever telling you, that you could have been aborted. You recognize that. I'll tell a story. I don't know if I've ever even reminded you of it, but one time something happened here at the office that made it clear that even when you were like 3 or 4 years old, you recognize that. Can this fool not recognize that? He could have. His life was at one point hanging in the balance.
Yeah.
I think he's taking it for granted.
But
He makes so much money. He's just an arrogant person. That's
And
all.
I think one of the problems here might be that he's simply not very bright, and he's being exploited by a bunch of people who have other agendas.
Yeah.
That's true.
Well, somebody needs to send him off at 21
Yeah.
somehow, some way.
And by the way, speaking of Nike, if you get this idea that they're this big noble organization, let's not forget that Nike has been accused many, many times, and in fact are doing it, using slave labor.
There have been documentaries that have proven it.
Yeah.
And it's
To make their shoes. So let's not listen to these people get on their moral high horse. And
besides, I have to say, I don't like Nike anyway because I have wide feet, and so their shoes aren't comfortable for me. So I don't support Nike anyway.
well, I'm not sure that's a moral issue, Sheila.
No, but
The
now
fact
I
that
can
you
jump on the moral way and back.
Unfortunately, I really like Nike. Not anymore, but
Not anymore. Under the heading of,
I just had to put
I
that.
should have known one of y'all.
this is what Mark has to put up with every day, all day.
From both of them, not just her.
From Tulane and
You
Sarah.
and Sarah, and all of you. Being the only male in the building. Well, no, I'm not the only male. We've got Tux.
We have all the animals.
Toby and Dusty and Willie.
All the animals are males that are in the building. Isn't that weird? We used to have 2 female cats, and they're now living with the crazy cat lady in Ponder, Texas, also known as Renee Hobbs.
Lynn and Linda say hi, by the way. Just
Hi, Lynn and Linda.
throwing that in there. real quick.
An Indiana woman who claims to be a minister of the Free Methodist Church,
Which she's not.
and she claims to be pro-life, which she's not. And this is why I've said before, a person's claim to be pro-life means no more today than a person's claim to be Christian. And this woman right here
Claims to be both.
claims to be both.
Yeah.
But anyway, she was testifying in the Kavanaugh hearings and said that it was pro-life and pro-Christian to support forcing Christian organizations to pay for abortions through Obamacare and birth control through Obamacare.
She used the Bible verse to justify her argument. She used the Bible verse John 10:10, which is, I have come that you may have life and have life to the full. She's claiming that birth control helps people, women, to live life to their fullest. Well, how about the life of the children? Does that allow them to live their life to the fullest?
Well,
no.
and she's not worried about that.
She's leading her flock down the wrong path.
Well, the interesting thing is, a spokesperson for the Free Methodist Church USA, a bishop with them, condemned her remarks and said that she no longer works for the Free Methodist Church. But she continues to call herself a pastor with the denomination, and as such spoke out at these hearings.
Right.
And this is, again, what you have to be wary of. All who come in my name, many I will say, I never knew you.
And let's just point out that these are the type of people that they're getting to speak at these hearings.
Right.
You know, so.
Exactly.
This is the best they can do.
She's a pathological liar on 2 fronts. She's not pro-life and she's not a Christian. Anyway, and she's not a preacher of this church. Somebody else, a woman named Cindy Sajwal, wrote an article in the Washington Post criticizing the fact that none of the people testifying against Kavanaugh were men. They were all women.
Well, this one irks me quite a bit because I have children, and my children could easily be taken advantage of by older men.
Right.
And these men want to keep their mouth shut because they want to be able to go to any drugstore and pick up a Plan B to abort that child if that person happens to have gotten pregnant.
It's not that they don't support. It's not that men aren't pro-choice. It's they're just not there with the
keep their
women
mouth shut.
protesting. Yeah, you see the angry women protesting.
Well, what you're alluding to is the child predator issue. And we said at the time, when you start selling Plan B over the counter, the biggest purchaser of it are going to be older men who are having sex with young girls. And let's remember, not our statistics, but the most reliable statistics out there, some of them produced by the United States government, show that among girls 15 and younger, 15 and younger who get pregnant in this country, 60 to 80% are impregnated by adult males, not by children.
Right,
Not
and
by
they
other
want to
children.
keep taking them to the abortion clinics to abort. Keep taking them to the abortion clinics to abort.
And so, of course, they're going to keep their mouth shut.
Exactly.
There are some men, and recently a lot pictures of these angry women protesting with some men out there, you know. But the men that are protesting are men that you don't want to listen to.
Right.
Our B-roll shows one of the pro-choice men, like Men for Choice, out there protesting. He is wearing a condom costume.
Right.
Sarah had to edit the B-roll so it's blurred out, so it's appropriate to air. But these are the type of men that are
Well,
protesting.
yeah, and not just that, but they wear the leather, like, swimming suits. I don't know what you call them, but with, like, the whips and chains hanging. And
So there are men
These
protesting.
are the good pro-woman men.
Yeah. So
And you know what's ironic about this, and I've said this many times before, if you look at what so-called women's groups say they want from men, when they describe those men, what they're describing is Christian right men. Men who take responsibility, who stick by the women they have sex with and impregnate, men who stay and raise their children. That's not these guys that they're talking about.
That are out there with them.
And it's an example of why the early feminists in this country were all pro-life, because they saw abortion was something that profited sexually irresponsible males.
Exactly.
And not these dingbats that are out there in condom costumes.
Right.
But I mean, it's not uncommon. If you go to our website, peopleofchoice.com, you can see that
What
this
kind of
group,
people we're talking about.
this group of people, stuff like that is not uncommon.
Not uncommon.
No.
And these guys out there, the
Are you
women
really going to listen to these guys out there in the condom
these
costumes?
are a vagina costume.
Yeah.
They have these giant 6-foot tall vaginas, and these guys dressed up in
Yeah.
these costumes. Yeah. Is this who you want influencing your family and your children?
And who you want sticking by you in an issue that you're trying
Good
to
Lord.
support.
And you know, we played on here one time. I've got a tape from a show that I did back in the early 90s. This so-called feminist, and she's still around, Ann Taylor Fleming. And I've got a tape of her literally saying that they should be grateful to, men should be grateful to women because women are the ones who have abortions and let these men off the hook.
Yeah.
And she says that's a good thing.
Yeah.
That she calls this a responsibility. Right. She said these women fulfill their responsibility and go ahead and have abortions to let these men off the hook.
Please keep using us and taking advantage of us.
Yeah.
Please, we beg you.
You know,
we give you all the power, just like Planned Parenthood. When you go to abort, you're giving them all the power.
All the power. It's just absolutely unfathomable.
Yes, it is.
Anyway, but what's more unfathomable than that, the fact that you've got people like this, like Ann Taylor Fleming or this Cindy Sajwal or whatever her name is. It's not so much that you have these kind of people. There's always been moral degenerates and moral defectives in every society in the history of the world. But other people didn't listen to them. And now people are listening to these fools. It's mind-boggling when you think about it.
I mean, just politics and abortion and, surrounding the news.
Right.
It's idiots leading other idiots.
And these are what's called useful idiots, and that's exactly what they are. Anyway, we're going to take a time out now for RoeBots. Yeah. And when we come back, we're going to get into the issue of adoption.
In 1973, the U.S. Supreme Court legalized abortion nationwide. The decision is called Roe versus Wade, and those who defend it are known as RoeBots. This is how they think.
I am pro-life, but there are some circumstances where I think abortion should be allowed.
For people who take this position, the most common examples they cite are when the pregnancy threatens the mother's life or health, when the pregnancy resulted from rape or incest, or when the unborn child is disabled. Other people claim to be pro-life despite the fact they only oppose late-term abortions. To see how intellectually dishonest these positions are, all you have to do is paraphrase them. For example, I am pro-life, but it's okay to kill babies who were conceived in rape. Or, I am pro-life, but it's okay to kill children with Down syndrome. Or, I am pro-life, but it's okay to kill babies during the first trimester of their lives. When paraphrased like this, the pro-life with exceptions philosophy always contradicts itself. It is as irrational as saying, no one has the right to own another person, but slavery is okay in certain circumstances. When someone says, I am pro-life, but abortion should be legal when, their claim to be pro-life is a fraud. In reality, there is no such thing as pro-life with exceptions. What people who take this position are actually saying is that they support the choice to kill certain babies, but oppose the choice to kill other babies. In other words, they are pro-choice with exceptions. What we need to understand is that the pro-life with exceptions mentality is a symptom of political correctness. In the modern world, we are being conditioned to see everything in shades of gray as if black and white do not exist. But the fact is, some things are always right and some things are always wrong. Remember, the only basis for the pro-life position is the recognition that a new human life is created the moment of fertilization. So if someone says it is acceptable to take some of those lives, by definition, that person has no legitimate claim to be pro-life. The guiding principle of the pro-life movement must always be that if a given circumstance does not justify killing a 5-year-old or a 50-year-old, it does not justify killing a child who is simply waiting to be born. Welcome back. All right, let's talk about adoption. We've talked about this issue many times in the past, but we have a lot of new viewers, and I had a email the other day, or you brought me or something from a woman, and then I had another call last week. Why we don't talk more about adoption and push adoption as the option to abortion. And I want to make sure people understand that nobody's a bigger fan of adoption than I am. I mean, I wouldn't have Sheila if it weren't for adoption. We adopted her when she was 6 days old. And that's had its ups and downs, of course. But we wouldn't take, anything in the world for it, and we're big believers in adoption. But we have to recognize something. Adoption is not the solution to the abortion issue. And the reason is very simple. When a woman, the 3,000 women that are going in to have abortions today in the United States, and the 60 million that have had them so far since this Holocaust began, in almost every case, their problem was not that they didn't want to have a baby. Their problem was they didn't want to be pregnant.
Right.
And adoption does not address that issue.
Yeah, doesn't cure that problem.
I mean, we should definitely support abortion.
Adoption.
Sorry. We should definitely not support abortion and support adoption. But the thing is, what we need to make clear as a pro-life movement, that it's all about the right to life.
Right.
From the moment of fertilization, it's about the right to life.
Whether that baby gets adopted or not.
Exactly.
Right, exactly. And I mentioned earlier when we were talking about Colin Kapernick not being smart enough to realize that since he was adopted, that meant that at some point his life was hanging in the balance. I had an experience here one day when we were dealing with a woman who died from a botched abortion. We were dealing with her husband and her attorney, and she died slowly over a period of 3 or 4 days. I think I've told you this the story about her.
Right.
And she first lost a hand. She had septic infection. She lost a hand. Then she lost a lower arm. This went on for 2 or 3 days. They kept on chopping off body parts, trying to stop the infection. And at the end, she was a trunk and a head.
Right.
And that was it when she finally died. And it was very, very depressing around here, around the office. And Sheila was about 3 or 4 at the time. And I remember I was sitting in my office, and my wife had gone and gotten her from they had a program at the Baptist church for children to go to, Mother's Day out or something like that. And Sheila loved going down there, so we took her down there. Well, anyway, it only lasted a few hours, and my wife was bringing her back. And Sheila always ran down the hall. I could hear her little feet coming down the hall, running toward my office. And she came running in, and she jumped up in my lap and sat down. And I guess she could see that I was upset about something and that I was depressed about something. And she started saying something, are you okay, Daddy? And finally she said, she used to call the abortionists the bad boys. Did the bad boys hurt another lady? Mm-hmm. And I said, yeah, they did. And she said, is she going to be okay? And I said, no, she passed away just a little bit ago, and she's gone. And she just sat there for a second, and then all of a sudden, out of nowhere, she looked at me and said, well, Daddy, at least they didn't get me. Mm-hmm. So even at 3 or 4 years old, whatever how old she was there at that time, she recognized, and we had never brought this up because we intentionally didn't want to bring this up in front of her.
Right.
We had never brought up the fact that had she not been adopted, she might have been aborted.
Right. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
But she was smart enough at that age to put the two together.
Yeah.
And Colin Kaepernick is not
Yeah.
smart enough to put that together.
Right.
But the thing we still have to remember is that, again, we want to push adoption, like you were saying, but it is not the solution to this battle. Because the problem with these girls and women that go in to have abortions is not that they don't want to have a baby, it's that they don't want to be pregnant.
It'll ruin their career. Financially, they can't afford the baby.
Or they're embarrassed.
They don't want to look bad in a bathing suit. I mean, there are so many reasons why these women abort their children. And
Right. It has nothing to do with not wanting a child. And, one of just obviously it's a philosophical argument. You could never do this. But I've often thought, if you had a pill that you could give a woman when she first found out she's 8 weeks pregnant, or 10 weeks pregnant, and you could give her this pill, and the baby would instantly go to 9 months, perfectly healthy, ready to be born, and you could say, we'll give you this pill, then we'll deliver your baby, and you'll be back in your regular life in a matter of hours, and we'll place the baby for adoption. Right. I think 99% of the women who are having abortions would take that deal.
Or even, like, this is kind of science fiction-y, but even if, like, they became pregnant and then you said, okay, well, you obviously don't want to be pregnant, so we'll just take, your uterus, the baby, and we'll just put it in somebody else. So this
that's
baby,
going to happen.
Well, yeah, so this baby can grow. A bunch of women would say, okay, I won't be pregnant anymore, but this baby will still be alive.
Right.
Yeah, they're experimenting on that right
They're
now.
experimenting with that right
That's a whole different.
as we speak.
That's a whole
But
different.
the point is that if you had that pill and you gave it to them and you said and I think 90% or 95% of them would say, yes, I'll do that. That proves that the issue is not that they don't want to have a baby. It's that they don't want to be pregnant. And you're sitting here hammering on them about adoption. They're not hearing the words you're saying. And I've had a lot of CPC counselors say, I cannot understand this. I sit here and this girl says, I can't have a baby now. I'm too young. I'm too this. I'm too poor. I'm whatever. I'm too something that I can't have a baby. And I show them a perfect way that they can not have the baby and they still have an abortion.
Right.
Yeah.
The answer is they didn't want to be pregnant.
They have to go through that 9 months,
Right.
whether or not the child is adopted.
And that requires taking care of yourself and your body and just, nurturing that baby while that baby's in the womb. And,
Right.
Talking about that pill, I would never have wanted to take a pill. I was pregnant 3 times, and my pregnancies were amazing. I had the best 3 pregnancies ever. So I wouldn't want to miss that for the world.
Yeah, but if you were 14 years old and in high school,
Right.
Yeah.
and your parents didn't even know you were sexually active,
Right. That would be a different story.
that would be a whole different story.
Which brings up the topic of supporting women while they're pregnant. A bunch of, like parents will say, oh no, we're shunning you. No, you need to support your child
Right.
so the child isn't killed. And like the schools, like Christian private schools, will kick
Pregnant girls out.
Yeah.
Yeah,
And so
right.
and so a bunch of them, because they're afraid of that, go have an abortion.
Right, exactly. And we've talked about that before because we addressed that issue many, many, many years ago, and it was really explosive for us around here when we found out that so many Christian schools in this country will kick a girl out for having an abortion. For having a baby, but they won't kick her out if she has an abortion.
Yeah.
It's just,
The baby isn't the problem.
baby is not the problem.
The baby is an innocent human being
Right.
that was created.
Right, that's right. Y'all got anything else?
I have an interesting comment. I'm not sure exactly where we were in conversation when he added this, but it was from Bruce or Lauren Stuckey. But it's like adopting a slave, but not freeing him or her. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, right.
So
That's right. You could adopt a slave and you still make them a slave. You hadn't changed anything.
yeah.
So anyway, anything else?
Nope, that's it.
That's all you got?
That's all I have.
That's all you got, Sheila?
I guess.
Stick y'all with a fork. You're done. All right. That's all the time we have. Until next Tuesday, remember, Life Dynamics is not here to put up a good fight. We're here to win because winning is how the killing stops. We'll see you next week.